Welcome back to our series on multilingual practices. I'm Brooke Heffright from the University of Maryland Center for Advanced Study of Language, or CASL.
And I'm Rachel Strong, also from CASL.
In the previous segment, we described the goal of this series, to understand how multilingual speakers use their different languages to convey meaning beyond literal content. Let's step back for a moment and think about this.
In English, we often talk about reading between the lines. This metaphor suggests that information we need to understand the words on the page is actually somewhere else. We'll call this somewhere else context. Now, context is potentially unlimited. It could be anything from a diagram in the back of the book you're reading to common sense knowledge we learned as children.
Fortunately, all languages come equipped with strategies for writers and speakers to clue readers or listeners into which bits of context are most relevant to the matter at hand. We call these strategies contextualization cues. Unfortunately, these cues are usually subtle, so they can be hard for non-native listeners to pick up on. And they can have more than one meaning, so that even native listeners occasionally misinterpret what the speaker is trying to get across.
Consider this example, which comes from the work of John Gumpers. A husband is sitting in the living room. He asks his wife, "Do you know where today's paper is?" She responds, "I'll get it for you." The husband answers, "That's okay, just tell me where it is. I'll get it." Finally, the wife says, "No, I'll get it."
Even without hearing the original exchange, you were probably able to correctly interpret each speaker's intentions without giving it very much thought. But did you notice "I'll get it" occurs 3 times and means something slightly different each time it occurs? In line 2, the wife's response, "I'll get it for you," indicates that she interpreted her husband's question as an indirect request. In line 3, the husband's response clarifies that he wasn't making a request, but asking a question. But in line 4, when the wife repeats, "I'll get it," she's expressing annoyance. Each time these characters say "I'll get it," the words stay the same, but the way the phrase is embedded in the context of the conversation changes its meaning.
Now let's look at examples of contextualization that involve more than one language. Imagine a speaker of American English says, "That dress is très chic." Most listeners recognize this phrase as including 2 separate languages, English and French. The French phrase très chic can evoke values typically associated with French or France, such as quality and style. The speaker may use this term to appear witty and cosmopolitan.
Or how about when speakers of American English occasionally pronounce the name of the company Target as Target? They use the stylized French pronunciation to evoke French quality and style, while joking about shoppers whose pretensions are out of step with their budgets. Lots of people do this, even if they don't know a single word of French.
In these examples, speakers use the juxtaposition of elements from different languages as a contextualization cue that tells listeners, "Pay attention, something's happening here." Then, speakers select elements from a particular language that have conventional associations, like French has with France, high style, and luxury goods. The cue points the listener toward these associations as the appropriate context for interpretation.
Of course, for contextualization to work, speakers have to provide the right kinds of cues. Listeners have to be paying attention, and speakers and listeners have to share both knowledge of the context and knowledge of the conventions that point to it. In other words, both context and contextualization cues vary from one group of speakers to another, and understanding contextualization cues can be very difficult for non-native listeners.
Nevertheless, we can identify some general patterns that will help us to determine when speakers are using multiple languages as a contextualization cue and draw inferences about how they intend listeners to understand what they are saying.
Paying attention to contextualization cues and being able to recognize them can help you to make judgment calls about the social characteristics of a group and to ground your inferences in language behavior.
In the next segments, we'll look more specifically at examples of the multilingual practice we call switching, and we'll show how it serves as a contextualization cue to convey information beyond literal meaning of the text.
Thanks for watching. I'm Brooke Heffright.
And I'm Rachel Strong. See you next time.